All right, I'm not really one for standing behind podiums, so I may move around a little bit. Can you hear me okay, everyone? All right, I see plenty of familiar faces, and I'm honored first to be here. And I hope I can share some wisdom and some experience, and probably some battle scars here, which I think are really necessary from a CEO perspective. So this talk is really going to be kind of set up from an early stage perspective, because that's really been the brunt of my experience. Taking an idea or finding an idea and kind of turning it into a company and get it commercialized. So that's where I'm going to focus on. So if I seem to be weighted that way, that's because I am. I only have 15 slides. I wanted to make this a discussion, so I'll leave some time at the end, but as we go through these, if there's a question or a thought, or if somebody has a kernel of wisdom to add on top, just please raise your hand. That's all I ask, and I'll pick on you. Okay, so next. So I'm going to talk a little bit about my background, so you just get an idea of kind of who I am, kind of what I've done, and how I think about the world. And I thought it was useful really to talk about the CEO role. You know, if you're a CEO of an early stage medical device company, I mean, really, what is that? What are your responsibilities? What are your duties? And you know, what are your keys to success? And you know, at the end of this, I've got a number of takeaways from 25 years in the business that I'm going to share with you. And then, as I mentioned, we'll leave some time for discussion. So my background, actually, we're a little fuzzy here. I don't know if you can improve that. Or maybe it's just me, but yeah, there you go. So I've got 25 years in medical devices. I've been actually privileged enough to be a contributor to 5 different startups. First one was in the late 1980s, so that's how old I am. I may look better, I hope I do. And I've carried roles from really engineer to manager to vice president, founding vice president, and founder and CEO. So I've kind of seen the whole gamut. I've watched a number of CEOs. Most of my experience has been at small companies, although I have been at 2 larger companies for short stints. So I think part of it, if you have the aspirations to be a CEO, find a good CEO, watch them, or find a CEO. We're all imperfect, and you know, a CEO's imperfections are very visible to see. Like some of the rest of us, watch, listen, and learn, and ask yourself, you know, how would I do it? Would I do it that way, or would I do it differently? If you do it that way, copy it, have it become part of you. If you do it differently, you know, think about it and put some thought into it. But what I did, and probably the biggest challenge I took on and the biggest risk I did, is I started a company. And how I started that company, I didn't take in technology from anywhere. I basically went looking for a problem. I think a real key here for medical device startups is you need to find an unmet need. Now maybe you have a technology and you find an unmet need for that technology. What I wanted to do is start from scratch, a blank sheet of paper, find an unmet need. I wanted to find somebody who was smarter than me, because you know, I'm humble enough to find people who are smarter than me, and I think that's one of my skills. And I partnered with a clinician at the Washington University in St. Louis, who is director of interventional pulmonology, and we went looking for a problem in his space. Dr. Mays and I founded the company, and I'll walk you through a little bit of the progression later on. Was quite successful, raising very challenging financing, and we started raising money in 2008 when times were still good in the very first part of it. In 2009, got serious about it, but the bottom had fallen out. We were able to stick with it. I was able to close a Series A in 2010 and get the company off and launching it. And I'll walk you through, you know, how we're able to do that, how you think about it, and just it is possible. It's difficult. It's possible. If you have a meaningful company and you really believe, I think you should still do it. Now, what I've done is transitioned out of the company. I led the company through Series B, raised about 20 million. Everything's going great, and you know, the board asked me to transition out, and I'll walk you through that story. And you know, with a medical device company, or as a CEO in general, your job is generally temporary. I ran the company for about 4.5 years. You know, things went really well, and the board's looking to maximize their investment. And I got replaced by a CEO who'd sold 2 companies in the prior 10 years, and kind of gave the keynote speech at the Wilson Sonsini conference down in San Francisco. So if you're going to get replaced, he's a good person to get replaced by. And what am I doing today? I got asked by a local VC to lead up one of their projects. So we've got a virtual team and kind of a virtual company, and 2 days a week I manage that. I raised about $500,000 for it. They want to put in about another $2 million if things go well. The other 3 days a week, I'm either consulting for very small companies or very large companies. So that's kind of what I'm doing. I haven't fallen in love yet, if you know what I mean. I fell in love at Hilera, so I'm still looking to do that and enjoying the ride. So, a startup CEO, so you want to be a CEO, what I would ask you to do is think about some things. It's a very challenging role, and I'm going to run you through that in those parts. But you've got to ask yourself, do you have the drive to do this? It's a role where you may spend 12 to 14 hours a day, some weeks, 7 days straight. Is that something you want to do? Is that something that you can live with? Because there are certain challenges you make with your family, you make with your friends, but it's just part of the job. Leadership qualities. Can you attract people to work for you that are smarter than you are? Can you lead them through their area of expertise, and will they follow you? Can you bring in investors? Once you brought them in, can you lead the board? And will the board listen to you? Can you attract the right advisors to the company? So, at the end of the day, the buck stops with you, and it's a heavy responsibility. And you need to make sure that people are confident in you, so you've got to be confident in yourself and project well. So I would think about that one especially. Experience. It's very important to be experienced. Now, my brunt of experience I brought to the role was I'd been in the industry for almost 20 years at the time. I'd watched a number of CEOs, so I understand a lot of the ways this is done. I was a founding VP, so I'd sat in a lot of the board meetings before I had to take the role as CEO. So experience is very important. If you still have those aspirations, and you have the aptitude, you think you have those abilities, surround yourself or find a mentor who can help you, because you're going to need the help whether you think you do or not. And the other point I have here is, if you have an idea, you love technology, you'd like to get rewarded by that, as all good technologies should get rewarded financially, don't say you need to be the CEO just because you want to make money, because you may do yourself a big disservice. And I would say money's not really the primary reward for most CEOs. For me, I like to build things. I like to bring people together. I love to work with people smarter than myself, and at the end of the day, I want to make a difference. That's why I do it. So you need that. You need motivation to go through hard times. You're going to have days where the technology isn't working, the money's running out in the bank, and life is also there. Can you persevere through that? Can you help others persevere through that? Because at the end of the day, everybody looks at the CEO and says, "Hey, Steve, what are we going to do now?" So what do? I start asking questions, help all of us figure it out. And you need vision to attract your team. That's probably the last thing on this slide. I think the best CEOs are able to bring in the best team and really bring people together to work. I mean, you want to have an environment where you have a number of talented people, and when you put them all together, the sum is much more than the individual parts. So, okay, so what is the role? Well, in my mind, it's really simple and it's really complicated. So, your role is to build value for your shareholders. That's your role. That's why the board or the investors give you money. That's what you're supposed to do for the employees. It's what you're supposed to do for yourself. So while that's very easy to say, it's hard to do. And I think I've seen a number of CEOs kind of lose track of that. And that's probably one of the reasons I wanted to become one. I'd just seen and done a lot and said, I want to try this, which I encourage folks to do if you're interested. But only if you've done a very thorough evaluation, if you talk to friends, and be cautious about it. So looking at that, for the early stage pre-commercial startup, I mean, these are the value builders in my mind. So number one, the market, and got a slide on all these. So is there really an unmet need that you're going to solve with this product? right? Or is this a technology looking for a problem? Those are two very different things, and we'll talk about it. Patents. So in medical devices in particular, protecting the ideas is very important. And I would say what's even more important than that is assuring that you have a freedom to operate, or that somebody's not going to show up once you've done all this hard work, once you've done this great commercial success, once you've sold the company, or getting close to selling a company, you say, wait a minute, that was my idea, and here's the patent to prove it. You never want to end up there. So these are things that are important, and I'll spend some time on that. The product. If you're doing something that hasn't been done before, doing something in the lab, getting some data, that's great. There's a time and a place for that. But if you're doing a product, it's got to solve a user need. There's certain things in first generation technology that can kill you. So, if, for example, you solve a very meaningful surgical problem, but the surgeons can't use it, well, they're not going to use it. And you will have not succeeded. Or if it's not reliable. I mean, those are big issues. So you really need everything. Data. So I'm going to talk about data some, and your data needs are going to vary. From the early stages, maybe you just need one graph to show the vision, and demonstrate how the technology can work. Then you get into the clinical stage. Well, you need well-run clinical data. It's clean, and maybe you need that to get money. At the end stage, maybe you need sales. But there's different things you're going to get measured by. You've got to have data that, I will say, first of all, you and your team believe. I think the mistakes a lot of companies make are they take data, they acquire data so they can raise money. Well, okay, if you can raise money and you haven't done all your homework, or you don't really understand what you have, that money you raise, there may be some, there's a come to whatever day that's probably in your future because you haven't shared everything or don't understand everything. Or you may not be able to raise money the next time at a valuation that makes sense for you. Data is very important. I think it's very important that you understand your data needs and that you and your team believe that you've gotten the right data at the right time. Financial. How much money is it going to take? Where are you going to get the money from? How fast are you going to spend it? These are very important things as well. And lastly, and by no means leastly, I think the people part is the most important thing about this. Can you attract the right talent? Can you attract the right investors? Can you get the right advisors? Can you get the strategics interested? These are all people-related processes, and they all have different expectations, different ways to bond with them. Building trust, all these things. So it's a lot of work, but see my face light up. I enjoy it. Building something is fun for me. It's a lot of work, but it's fun. Okay. So in the market, this is probably the first place when I look at a new idea or new technology. Is there really an unmet need here? And in my mind, it's got to be significantly better than what's out there. I went to business school at UW, and there's some business literature says it's got to be 10 times better than what's out there. I don't know what the right number is, but change is very difficult and challenging for anybody, period. And in medicine, it's even more challenging. Physicians get trained on processes and procedures and surgeries, right? They're not necessarily trained on how to be creative or accepting of new technology. There are different market segments, different kind of types of clinicians, and some that are very amenable to it, which are great. So those folks, they'll talk to you about anything. They love new ideas. They'll say nice things. They're not your market. So you really need to understand your market, which is the majority of surgeons if it's a surgical device, and understand, do they really have an unmet need? Do they believe in the unmet need? Because I've been on technology where, from an R&D perspective, spent many, many nights and weekends and whatever else getting technology done, only to understand by the time it got to the market that the clinicians didn't think that was a problem. So we had to convince them they had a problem, and then we could convince them we had a solution to the problem they didn't think they had. You don't want to go there. It's too much work. So anyway, really give a lot of careful thought to the unmet need. Make sure you understand your customers and make sure you're really solving a problem. What's the accessible market size? I can't tell you. I've been looking at a lot of business plans and talking to a lot of early stage folks. I can't tell you how many times I've heard, hey, this is $1 billion market and we're going to get 2% of it. Okay. those really aren't believable numbers. And how are you going to get there? Who's going to have to adopt it first? What do your early sales look like? And how fast does it grow? So, the market is there, great. If there's an unmet need, great. You've got to get to it, and you've got to be able to monetize it. Who are the customers? Go out and talk to customers, and talk to customers in different market segments, from those early adopters who you need to talk to, because they'll work with you, they'll get excited about it. Talk to some of the kind of early stage folks, and then talk to some of the later stage folks, and just get an understanding of the market segment, get an understanding of the customers, and listen to them. When we talk to customers, when I talk to customers, just like when I talk to people when I'm raising money, I always preface it in the early stages of the discussion. We want to hear whatever you have to say. In fact, if you have something to say that is negative, we want to hear that more than the positives, because we need to find out, what our issues are here. And if you're open with that and you take it well, people will share their thoughts. If you don't take it well or you get defensive, they won't tell you. They'll say, oh, this looks nice. And like my daughter when she was 1, give her something to eat, she doesn't like it, right? And you ask her how it is. Oh, it's good, it's good. Would you like some more? No, thank you. You'll get that type of approach. So I would encourage you to be critical and to ask other people to be critical as well. And how are customers going to pay for it? Sorry, that's okay. That's all right. So that's my takeaway. Anyway, we already got there. Thanks. Go ahead. Yeah. Patents. So as I talked about when we first started, I think freedom to operate is essential. It's not easy to do. Patents are, as the patent attorney in the room will tell you, she's not me, she's sitting in the front row. This is not straightforward, but you need to understand it, and you need to understand it well. Because if you don't have a freedom to operate, or you may have a freedom to operate issue, or maybe there's a patent or patent application that doesn't have issued claims. So technically, you don't have a freedom to operate issue, but if you read the specification, your invention's in there. Well, they may be able to get claims later, or they may go get claims later to cause you trouble. My advice to you is have an open mind. Understand the whole landscape, and more often than not, that company is probably not working on your problem. And in many cases, been very successful doing this. Go out and license it. Have a discussion with them. And in the early stage, it's easy, right? Because you don't really have anything. It's very likely you're not going to be successful. And I've bought pieces of IP for nothing because they're going to abandon it. Done licenses where it's very little up front, with the understanding that, hey, if we're successful, we sell the company, and this piece of IP covers our device. When we get the exit, you get a piece of it. So, there's a lot to do, but I think it's on your onus to really understand it and to do a good job of it. And second, protect your competitive advantage. So the thing about patents are really a legal device to prevent others from practicing. So in the medical device world, the most valuable companies that have everything else also have intellectual property that prevents competitors from practicing. So in order to do that, you have to have a claim that every single word in that claim covers the other person's invention. So it's a whole art and strategy to doing that. And it's a lot of work. It's worthwhile, and you should definitely do it. And then the other thing is, file the patents early. There's something called a first to file in the United States Patent Office now. It's very easy to file early cases, something called a provisional application, where you take your idea. My advice to do as good a job on that as you can, get an attorney to help you, and then get it to the patent office. Never talk to anyone about anything, raising money or otherwise, who's outside the company before you have something on file at the patent office. I can't tell you how many times I've seen people out raising money and talking about filing patents later. There's no reason for it. So it's just something else to think about. And then the other thing too, none of this is going to be a problem at all if you're not successful. But if you're successful, you want to have all the early stage patent work, the foundation done, and the agreements between inventors early. So Dr. Mays and I, before we Right after we filed the case, we had a discussion about ownership, right? And we got it in writing. And I guess in closing here, I can't put enough point on the freedom to operate. That's the first thing to do. Make sure that you have a right to practice. So on the product side, first of all, your product must solve a customer problem. Goes back to the unmet need. Unmet need, the product needs to solve it. And it needs to solve it well. So with that, there are a number of first-generation technology issues and device issues and manufacturing issues and reliability issues. You need to solve these well enough. And what is that? It's something through experience. I bring an experienced team in who understands products. I bring an experienced clinical team that understands the clinic and what's acceptable. Because if you have product issues that tarnish your data or your clinical data, you're doing yourself a big disservice. You can still have usability challenges there if you're with the right clinicians and you manage them well enough. I think that's okay. Because you've got to make compromises all along the way. When you start selling the product, you can have a real issue with usability issues because if you don't manage them well, people just won't adopt the product despite everything else that you've done. So, next is realistic development timelines and budgets. You're going to be asking your team to do something in a particular period of time for a particular amount of money. Include them in the process. Make sure they own that schedule and they own that budget. Because at the end of the day, they're probably going to be late and they're probably going to be over budget. So what I typically do is I work with them, I let them develop it, I add a little bit of buffer on top. I said, all right, if you think you can make it with that, we're going to put a little bit of cushion on top. You're really going to make it with that. Oh yeah, thank you. So they're bought in. On the investor side, I'll put a buffer on the other side and just lower the expectations as much as I can because we're going to have issues, we're going to have challenges. Because at the end of the day, you want your development team bought in and committed because it's going to take a lot of work and effort. And you want your investors at the end of the day to look at you and say, wow, you did that under budget and on time. So those are things that you need to do as CEO. If you don't do either one of them well, I'll give you examples. So the development team, you do the budget and hand it to them. You do the schedule and hand it to them. It's your schedule and budget. They're not bought in. So at the end of the day, when you go to them and say, hey, you know what? Is it ready? Are you on schedule? Well, no, we're not. I think that's a big risk. So I think that's something to watch for. And then I'm not going to go into detail here, but for a medical device, many regulatory and compliance and other issues, bring in a team that's done this before, who's been through the process. That's really my advice here because it's all important. So data, it's a saying that somebody at my first startup said. In God we trust, all others data. At the end of the day, you've got to believe that you're where you think you are. Your team's got to believe it. And if those two things happen, you can convince everybody else. And be honest, because it all comes out in the end. If you're not honest, I'm going to talk to you about the CEO role and everything else. They'll walk you quickly because trust is really a big deal here. But the data you need at each stage is going to vary. If you're looking for seed or angel financing or some money from C4C, you might not need a lot of data, but just give it some thought as to what is the data you need. I'll give you an example here. At my previous company, Holera, we have a device. It's a medical device that does a physiological change to the lungs to open up airways. So in my discussions with Dr. Mays, Marty, here's what I think we need. We need one graph. It's very easy and simple for anybody to understand. It needs to show that in a healthy animal, drugs open up airways. But there's lots of challenges with drugs, which everybody knows. But one of the key challenges we can show on a single graph is drugs have a transient response. So the drugs open up airways. We can see that it gets easier to move air in and out of the lungs. Drugs go away after 45 minutes. Dr. Mays does his procedure. Airways open, and they stay open for not 3 hours. Great, that's it. We got that one graph. It was huge. It enabled us to get a grant from Johnson & Johnson. After we got those two pieces, it allowed me to close Series A, which I hadn't been able to do before. So what is that piece of data that really makes a difference? It's got to be simple, it's got to be easy to understand, and it's got to be one slide. It's like, wow, you guys did that? I think it's really important. And as you get into it later, it's going to change. So, going out raising Series B, what was it then? Well, guess what? We were ahead of schedule and under budget. And our first round of clinical data, although I can't tell you what it is, I can tell you raised Series B at a very nice step up in a really challenging time. So, that was kind of our key metric. The next step, companies going out for a bigger round, it's more clinical data, right? So maybe stats behind it and other things like that. So, going to a company acquisition, my advice to you, if you're going to sell your company, which most of these will, go out and talk to strategics. Talk to them very early. In fact, we talked to all the potential strategics I did at Hilera before I raised Series A. I wanted to know who it was, wanted to make sure there was more than one, and wanted to understand what they're interested in, and when would they be interested in buying a company. I mean, business development people love to talk, they love to meet. I mean, just go out and meet with them. And finally, and I've probably said this 3 or 4 times, convince yourself first, then you can convince other people. All right, next slide. Somewhere in here there's a question too. I know it. It's coming. All right, just a couple slides and then you guys can have at me. So financial, how much money are you going to need? I remember a very early Hilera deck where it's called Innovative Pulmonary Solutions at the time, where mapped it all out, mapped out all the different stages, $65 million from beginning to end. So we're probably within right around that range still, so I'm pretty proud of that. But how much money do you need? How much money do you need early? And what are you going to need to get that next round of money? It's a whole art of this. When should the financing occur? What are your key milestones? I mean, I talked you through a few, right? With Series A, before Series A, it's show me, give me enough to believe. So we had some very early animal data, we had some patents, and we could lay out claim scenarios that were believable, we believed, and that, wow, if you were able to get those claims, that could be quite valuable. On the product front, we had some other products that we could minorly modify. We had a very unique and novel catheter, but we didn't need to do a whole development program. That one piece we needed to do. So all that made sense. After that, we needed human data. And short of compelling human data, there may not be a next round. So just, you have to give thought to that. What are the stages and what are you going to need? And, because you need to, you need to. I think you do. I mean, you need to plan for increasing the value of the company at each stage. If you don't, it can be very painful. A company before this, Calypso Medical, $175 million paid in. One of the founders moved to Seattle to help the CEO get it started. I knew the CEO from a prior life. I didn't get anything out of the company. So I'm not going to do that again. So it's just one of those things where, if it happens, it won't be because we didn't give it enough thought or we didn't really think it through. So, and who will you raise money from? Do you have connections? Do you know people who have connections? And I will tell you that I knew a number of folks because of my Calypso experience and my participation in board meetings. But everybody knows everybody in this business. So go out and talk to people. Ask them. Ask people who've been in the field. Who would you talk to? And you may have to show them your wares. You may have to give them a talk. And if they believe in it, they may give you an introduction to somebody who can help you. But if you just ask, like if somebody just asked me for a recommendation to the gentleman who led our Series A, I'm not going to give it to you unless I believe that it's worthwhile, because I don't want to waste his time and I only have so many bullets in my gun. If it's worthwhile, I'll certainly give it to him because I want to help him because he's going to help me again someday. And I'd say expect to hear no very often. I was told no 36 times before I got told yes, I was going to get a term sheet. So my advice to you there is expect it. And I like to think about fundraising. I'll give you an analogy, kind of the train approach. Start off in the distance, way out there. Talk to people who who you respect, who you value their opinion, who aren't going to give you money. Because your early deck is wrong. And you don't know how it's wrong because you're too deep into it. You're going to revise it, you're going to change it, you may even throw the whole thing out and start over again. Do that with people who aren't going to give you money, because the time you get there, you want to be perfect. the money, you've got to have the right answers. You want to be asked pretty much every question that key investor is going to ask you. You want to be asked those questions, which may not be apparent to you, before you get to that meeting, because you don't want to get surprised. You may get surprised. If you do, take it humbly, take notes, get back to them, but you don't want to. So be prepared. And when they tell you no, because they're going to tell you no, or they may not even say no, oh, not now, or they'll give you these soft little responses because they may want to get back in the deal later. Ask them why. You know, be nice, be humble about it, and ask them why. And most people will tell you, you know, or work at getting them to tell you, because if there's a fundamental flaw with your plan, if there's something else that out there competitively that you don't know about it, if they don't feel comfortable with you as CEO or part of your team, you need to know that. So ask them why, and really work at doing it. So I take no's a lot better than I take yeses. The single yes I got, it was great, thrilled. When do you want to talk next? Get off the phone. Don't want to let them change their mind. You know, the next thing too, as far as fundraising, I don't think there's any substitute for doing it. You know, if you haven't done it and you want to do it, get somebody who's done it and connect them with you closely, because it's hard. It's hard. Investors don't think like you think if you're bringing the company along. A lot of it's network, a lot of it's credibility, because at the end of the day, they're going to write you a check if you're CEO, and they're going to expect, or at least have a good hope, that you're going to return them more money than that money someday. So if you've done that before, if you've raised money from somebody and they've made money on you, it's a totally different ball game than if you're, hey, I was founding VP of R&D at Calypso Medical, I went out and got my MBA, wanted to try being CEO, right? It's harder. So that's not me now, right? I built value for shareholders. I've done everything I needed to do. I think Hilera is going to be a big success, and you know, we brought in somebody who sold companies before. Like, therapy is wonderful. You know, I'm a different person now, but there's just differences that you do. I wouldn't change anything I did. I had a ball doing it. So anyway, next. So just a couple takeaways from the early rounds, and then I think we're open for questions. So this is just a little bit of the process that I used. You know, no more than 20 slides. This is 15 slides. Don't go any more than this. And listen for what's wrong. What's wrong with the plan? It could be the message. It could be how you're talking about it. It could be the words you're using. I mean, these are things that you want to vet. Plan to review and revise again and again and again. I don't know how much more to say that. You need to be highly confident. You need to be able to give the pitch without looking at your slides at all. And that's what you need to be able to do. And put your most desirable investors last. I know it's strange. I know everybody wants to run out and say, this is the group I want. I'm going to go talk to them. Don't. You know, talk to at least half a dozen, if not more, folks before you get to them. And you know, if you're lucky, you only get one chance. You know, you want to show well. And if they're not interested, you want to find out why, and you want to find out what would it take to get interested. So our group that led Series A told me no. So I asked them, you know, what would it take? And you know, the principal who was kind of doing most of the work didn't give me a really solid answer. I knew one of the founding partners because he was a board member at Calypso. I said, you know, Kirk, if you don't mind, I'd like to talk to Ross Jaffe. So I got on the phone with Dr. Jaffe and asked him the same questions. I needed to know, is it the technology? Is it the market? Is it me? You know, and he said, no, it's none of those, which is great. It's rewarding, especially with the last one. And you know, what do you think I should do, Ross? And he said, Steve, if I was you, I'd go out and get some consulting. And he says, you need some data. We had no data at the time. And for me, I just can't get it. I cannot convince my partners to do another pulmonology company. We've already invested in 3, and this is March of 2009, right? Just the trough of the fiscal crisis, you know, kind of right when the stock market was at the bottom. So we did just that. We went out and got the animal data, got a check from J&J, which he didn't say we needed, but we got validation from a strategic, and the whole world changed very quickly. Okay, and this is just an example of how long it takes. You know, for Hilera, it's a PMA style intervention, PMA being the regulatory path. Huge market, you know, millions of patients in the U.S., you know, tens of millions around the world. It is basically, you know, going to be in probably a 6 to 10 year endpoint from the time we founded the company. I went looking for a big problem, partnered with Dr. Mays, November 2007. Yeah, Dr. Mays, world-class academic, kind of humble upbringing. Dad built homes for a living. He really wanted to start a company, right? So we did our process. We found the unmet need. He had the epiphany. He stayed up till 3 in the morning, St. Louis time, sending me these emails. Finally, I sent him the last one. I said, Marty, please, go to sleep. Thomas Edison had a saying, it's 1% inspiration, it's 99% perspiration. And that's really the startup world. And I think he would agree that now. We targeted our investor meetings, did all the homework ahead of time, make sure we were right. Big decisions when we got told no for the 36th time. Marty had 4 academic job offers. I told him that, I'm not ready to give this up. In June, I said, Marty, I'm going to give it till the end of the year. If we don't have any traction, I need to get a job. And he said, all right, I'm going to stay with this with you. We raised $75,000 from some friends, close friends. Every time I took a check, I said, please, don't count on seeing this money again. This is risky. I value our friendships more than your checks, including a close friend of yours who was one of our early folks. And, I didn't want to lose any friendships over it. Thank goodness everything's gone well. If you're taking a check from somebody else, it's their money. I know what they say, but it's still their money. And, they're writing you a check as CEO expecting to make more money, or they wouldn't be writing the check. Got some money from J&J, term sheet, closed Series A. Did a great job, closed Series B. Had my annual review. Board said, Steve, great job. We love it. Did a very nice job doing a 360 on me. Thinking, wow, this is cool. My wife's going to be able to put in her new kitchen, right? And then I got the, oh, by the way. So, I'm not the only one who's gotten those. A number of other medical device CEOs get them. But it's part of the process. So I talked to all of our investors, just like during fundraising. It's the same type of deal. Am I missing something here? I didn't get any really, I got some feedback, but nothing that was, killer. And one of the guys just said, hey, we think this is too valuable to trust somebody who may make rookie mistakes. You just don't have enough scar tissue. So I have more of it now. Next. So people, startups are intense, as you probably got out of my talk. Your team's ability to overcome obstacles is going to make or break you. You need to make sure you get the right people in, and you need to make sure you get people who are not afraid of adversity, who are honest, who come to you and say, Steve, I know you don't want to hear this, but you need to hear this. So those types of folks are the ones you want, and that work together well. Investors are on your team. Don't take money from anyone who doesn't understand what they're giving you, because the wrong investors can make your life miserable. For example, if I would have taken money from a VC who did IT investments and expected a payback in 3 years, where this is a 6 to 10 year payback, that could have been a big mistake. So just don't do it. And then grow your company only after you've achieved your milestones. So another mistake I've seen, and that probably another Calypso learning, is, in the old days, 2000, one would raise money, build a very experienced management team all the way out, and then, tend to build this big thing. Now it's not that way anymore. So burn rate would go up very quickly too early. Now it's around really building value, which I think makes more sense. It was like that in the late 80s, early 90s. I think there's just too much money around in the 2000s. So I'd be very cautious about building any more infrastructure than you have to. If you hire more people, you may have to lay them off. I hate doing that. I've done it too often. I just hate doing it. Bring in consultants. Make sure you get the right consultants who want to solve your problems, not just bill by the hour. And hire those key people that you have to have. But be smart about it. Be strategic. And advisors. So at the end of the day, the company really is the people. The technology's there, the problem's there, and everything else. But without the right people, it's not going to happen. So all right, first time CEO lessons here, right? Decided to do it. Had my own experience. I tried to do it, did it. I finished it. It's great. I'm going to do it again. Your job's temporary. I really understand that now. And I think, having gone through the whole thing, I think if you do get asked to leave, your behavior when you get asked to leave tells those investors whether they're going to write you a check again. because the board has rung the bell, they've rung the bell. You need to make sure that you're putting the company first. What did I do? I convinced everybody who needed to stay they would stay. I convinced them that it made sense for them to move to Minneapolis, even though it was negative 15 yesterday. And I stuck around. I helped recruit the new CEO, which is great because my behavior, they felt comfortable enough telling me about it. And my only response was, wow, it's not what I thought I would hear, but I know what I signed up for. So I helped do that. I was able to help recruit the person, make sure they're the right person. I stuck around for 6 months to make sure the company is well on its way. And my role at that point was to work my way out of a job, which I did. That's fine. And we're out doing new adventures. But one of three scenarios happens. You do a good job. I've spent too much time talking about that. Company does poorly. They're just going to walk you. And it could happen at one board meeting. I know CEOs that have just been walked after one board meeting. Didn't see it coming. Goodbye. So especially if there's some issue of trust or loss of faith, you're gone. So just, it's very important to be honest and direct. Investors, the right investors have seen all kinds of things go wrong. So your job is to, share the bad. I always shared the bad news first, but left them with some good news because we always had both. It's very important to manage expectations in a way and to keep trust and to build it over time. I actually think the most challenging one is number 3 here. So just takeaways, and we still have some time for questions, and I'm okay going over for a little while anyway. So do it for more than money. I mean, for me, it's a sense of adventure. I want to make a difference. Solve a real problem. I think that's really important. If you haven't really done the homework there, you probably won't be able to raise the money. And if you can raise the money, you're probably not going to make any money on it. Just be really careful about that. And all the time you spend working on something that may not get to the end is time you could have spent working on something else or finding something else. So you only have so much time in this world. Treat it as valuable as it is. Protect your competitive advantage, all around patents, right? Do your homework there and the things that we talked about. Choose your team wisely. I've got some folks that I've worked with across multiple companies. It's very valuable because you already understand each other. But there's always new people we need to bring in. Really spend a lot of time on the hiring process. Don't hire just for experience. Don't hire just for aptitude. Hire for some combination of both, along with just who they are. Listen carefully. Some of us, like me, it's been a learned skill. I try to work on it every day. I think it's really a key attribute of the best CEOs. You need to be able to understand what other people are thinking, and if they're not telling you, you need to get it out of them, because there may be something in there that you need to know. And when somebody's talking, let them talk. Or if it's not the appropriate time, follow up with them later. I think it's really important. And finally, you got to believe and be persistent. If you don't, nobody will. So it's kind of it. So, questions?